Hi everyone, I'm Literary Freak 11. Today is 13 of Journey Through the Multiverse of My Mind. If you don't know what that is, you can go refer to the first video in the playlist for me to explain. So without further ado, I'm going to begin reading. I think this card is pretty self-explanatory. My brother hugged me one final time. My parents had already given me their hugs and stood off to one side. He whispered in my ear, "Go, now. The light spirits will guide you through the night. And be brave." "Thank you," I said, accepting the wrapped parcel he handed me, made of large, thick fig leaves. My mother had sewn it together. She had a gift for cell manipulation, particularly those of plants. The seams of the bag puckered like a healing cut, but it was solid and it would hold. I slung the vine straps over my shoulders. There was a great deal of trusting I had to do to embark on this journey. I had to take this package to the Sky Fortress, wherever that was, not knowing what it contained. I had to trust my ignorance in order to protect me. That by not telling me, my parents and brother had protected me. They had told me one day ago they were part of a secret organization, and I had to trust they had kept that knowledge from me for a reason. And now I was being sent away, and it might be a long time before I saw them again. But yet, I took my first step, the biggest, most trusting one of all. Instead of landing in the grass, it landed on the air like a step. I pushed myself up. My family's magic was small, which relegated us to the lower class. Making this pathway for me was siphoning off weeks of their life. So I ran to lessen their work. After only a minute, I was exhausted. I slowed my pace, making my strides as large as I could. I rose higher and higher. The further I rose from the ground, the darker it got, as all the light from the town disappeared. I was just about to sprint into darkness when I saw one. It stood as an indistinct figure, long hair, which seemed to be blowing in the cool night air. Her long dress waved in the wind. Although the figure carried a lantern, it seemed that the light was being emitted from her, as though she were her own sun. As the light spread out around her, it illuminated the path before me. Next was a man in a top hat and his scarf blowing in the wind. The other was hard to tell, but I thought she was a woman in trousers and a bun on top of her head. As I jogged for hours, I saw the path had leveled out before me. I hoped this meant that I was almost there. I was exhausted and the sky was beginning to lighten. My family had laid out this path before me, but what did that mean? I saw the Sky Rebels' fortress, but I was no closer to understanding what it meant. Our life had always been difficult, but peaceful. Who were we to rebelling against? I couldn't help but being irked that my older brother knew what was going on and I'd been kept in the dark. And now, what would happen to me? I was scared to think. To distract myself from these morbid thoughts, I tried to take a closer look at the light fairies, but they were far away and I was moving past too quickly. I couldn't get distracted. The fairies' glow fell upon the Sky Fortress. It was a massive dome, and it seemed to be rising to meet me. It had a great many propellers sticking out all over it at different levels so that they didn't collide. It had sails as well, but the one on the top was closed, and as I watched, the ones on either side began folding inwards as the fortress leveled out before me. I raised my fist, wondering if I should knock, but the door slid sideways. I was looking at a gruff man with colored twine and glass beads threaded through his shoulder-length black hair. "The innocent has arrived," he called to the room behind him and gestured for me to come in. As I came into the fortress, a roar of cheers greeted me. I could see several balconies above me. People applauded and waved down at me. I took the bag sheepishly off my shoulders and smiled between panting. I handed it to the man who had let me in. "Thank you." "What's inside?" I asked. "We'll discuss it in a bit." "These two will show you to your room," he said, gesturing to two women in aprons. "They can get you some water to drink and wash with first." All that sounded good to me, so I nodded and followed the two women. We walked up 3 flights of stairs and then exited onto a corridor and went into one of the rooms. There was a small bed and a dresser and a few books stacked on top of a small desk. There was barely enough room for 2 people to lay down next to each other on the floor. One brought in a wash basin and set it on the desk, while the other brought a pitcher and a glass of water. Then they closed the door behind me. I began to drink, but then I heard the lock click and my heart sank. I was locked in. This had all been a trap. Well, that's all I have for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video.